Like, everyone was wishing me congratulations when I'd finished, but I hadn't broken the record yet. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm excited to have you back here with me today because today I'm gonna be talking about something that a lot of people actually have questions about, and that is what it takes to break a Guinness World Record. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hey guys, before we begin, please be sure to give this video a like as it really supports my channel, and let's just get into it. All right, so what does it take to actually break a Guinness World Record? A lot of people think that I was on a vacation or it was just really easy to travel to every country in the world if you have the money to do it. A lot of people don't really know the time and effort it took to go on an expedition like I did to every single country in the world, but let alone to actually break a Guinness World Record. So while there's many things we could dive into, like funding and sponsorship, which I've actually gotten into on my channel before, this video I want to talk about the rules and regulations enforced by Guinness World Records in order to break a record, such as the fastest person to travel to all sovereign nations and the fastest person to travel to all sovereign nations female. So we're going to specifically be diving into the evidence and the proof that I had to provide Guinness World Records when it came to justifying those two Guinness World Records that I broke back in 2017. So let's get into cost. Currently costs $800 if you're looking to break an existing record, and it costs more if you're setting a new record. Now, after your record is completed, you can also purchase an expedited evidence review, which costs $600, and this gets your record reviewed within 5 business days rather than waiting the traditional 12 weeks. So yes, it does cost money to start a Guinness World Record attempt, and yes, you will have to pay money in order for them to verify your evidence. Is there any prize money when you break a Guinness World Record? The answer is no. The most that you'll get is publicity. So it really helped for me to be able to say that I was attempting to break a Guinness World Record when it came to securing funding from sponsors and investors. They saw that this was something solid that they could kind of cling to, and it wasn't just like a nebulous idea that I was just traveling every country in the world and trying to break a record. Well, what record exactly? And that was Guinness World Record. So it did help for me to be able to utilize Guinness World Records when it came to press, sponsorships, funding, that sort of thing. But otherwise, no, you're not winning any money from breaking a Guinness World Record. So let's get into the evidence needed to break a Guinness World Record. So I'm specifically talking about my record, and the evidence necessary for other records is going to be different. But for mine specifically, there was a lot of evidence that I needed in order to break my record. So let's get into that. Number one is media articles. So if I was in press or the media in that country, then I would submit that printed media article either online or in print. Number two is, of course, passport stamps. But a lot of countries in Europe, for example, don't stamp your passport. Same with North Korea. So in those countries, I had to provide other forms of evidence. And I tried to provide at least 4 forms of evidence to Guinness World Record. In case one didn't pan out, I would try and collect as much as possible. Number 3 is video evidence. Also, photographic evidence would go in this category as well. So a video of me with the airport name in the background or the bus name in the background, just some sort of landmark that Guinness World Records would be familiar with. So whenever I got off a plane or got off a ferry or a train or a bus, I would make sure the first thing I do when I got in that country was to videotape myself with some sort of landmark or the name of the bus station or something behind me so that they can see. Also, I'd get a photo of myself as well. Now, back in the day when they didn't have, photo and video to really prove that you were doing something, you would use other forms such as this next one, which I'm going to mention, number 4, signed witness statements. So if I'm in a country and I can't necessarily get, a passport stamp or photo or video, I would try and get a signed witness statement as well. And this is someone in that country, like an official or someone who owns a restaurant, something like that, and they essentially sign saying that you're there at that place and time, and that's what you could use for Guinness World Records proof as well. So if Guinness needed to verify that with them, they could contact them because they'd have to put their number down or their address or whatnot. All right, number 5 is receipts, and I have a lot of receipts that I collected. Receipts from hotel stays or hostel stays, from taxi rides, bus tickets, plane tickets, restaurants, if I went to a store, that sort of thing. So I collected all of my paper receipts, and I ended up just taking pictures of them and inputting them into my computer. And then I also had the hard copies that I submitted to Guinness as well. Number 6 is letters that I would send back home. This works specifically for North Korea, for example, where I couldn't collect a lot of this evidence, so I had to send letters back home, and those were post-dated. And this is what they would also do in the days when there wasn't, GPS or passport stamps or photos, is they'd send letters back. It's actually what Nellie Bly did to prove her trip around the world in 72 days. So in North Korea, I sent a letter to myself, I sent a letter to my parents back home, I sent a letter to my grandma, and that's to prove that you were in that country. Number 7 is phone logs. Whenever I arrived in a country, I would make like a 5-second call to usually my parents just so they can track that I was in that country making that phone call. Every single country where I was able to, sometimes my data didn't work and whatnot, but I would try and make one phone call to my parents, and just so they knew that I was there, that I could track that as part of my proof and evidence. Number 8 is GPS coordinates. I would use this through tracking on my phone. Your phone can track your location, so we would use that, but also as a backup, I would use a Spot satellite GPS tracker, which didn't work in a lot of African countries, so I had to use all these other modes of proof. I also couldn't use that in North Korea, for example. But that satellite GPS tracker was really great to track my whereabouts. It also had an SOS button in case I got into trouble. I could click that and hopefully I'd get help. Number 9, and I've said this before in the other ones with receipts, but tickets. So even if you don't manage to buy anything in that country to get a receipt or stay the night or whatnot, your ticket, as well as a few other modes of proof, will suffice. Guinness World Records required the tickets, the proof of getting from one place to the other through scheduled public transportation. They required these tickets so that they knew that you weren't taking private transportation. So to get between each country, I had to prove that I took a plane, I took a ferry, I took a train, I took a public bus. So I had to prove getting to each country through these tickets. And that was a key part of evidence that I needed in order to break my Guinness World Records. When I finished my expedition, I had to provide everything in various forms to Guinness World Records for them to verify. So number 1 is I needed to have a cover letter that just essentially summed up what I did and what was going to be provided in this bundle that I was sending to them. So it's essentially like a cover letter for a job interview or something like that. It was essentially just saying what I did. It was kind of like a blurb that they could also use in their press and PR as well. It also included some pictures of me that they could use if they wanted to promote it, and just so they could also further prove who I am and whatnot in that cover letter. Number 2 is I needed a copy of my passport to submit. Obviously, you can't travel to every single country in the world and say you did so without having a you have to have a passport. I mean, they have to believe that you actually have a passport to travel. You need to submit that copy of your passport as well. Number 3 is your logbook. Of course, this has all of the countries that you went to in chronological order. Number 4 and 5, you need to have Schedule 2 and 3. These need to be signed. These essentially state that you followed all the guidelines with regards to your specific Guinness World Record and blah, 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 all that fine print. Okay, let's get into the record definition. For my specific record, they had 4 definitions. Number 1, the record is for the fastest time to set foot in all sovereign countries. Number 2, this is to be attempted by an individual, not a group or whatnot. Number 3, the record is measured in years and days. And number 4, this record is the overall record from the male and female categories. And it was for the fastest time to visit all sovereign countries by an individual. There's a lot of rules when it comes to breaking my record, and I'm gonna list them all here. Now, I'm not necessarily gonna read them out to you because I feel like it might be boring, but I will put it up here on the screen so you can kind of follow through. So this might not sound like a lot to you, but obtaining this evidence from every single country in the world was extremely difficult. It's something that on several occasions I had to really risk my life to do. I mean, one time I was in Rwanda and I had left the airport and I was waiting for my taxi, and I tried to get a video of myself outside the airport. There were guys with machine guns there pointing them at me, telling me to stop. And I was like, ended up in tears a little bit because I was so disappointed in thinking that I might not be able to obtain proof from having been there for this Guinness World Record. I owed it to my sponsors and the students and all the people that I met and had meetings with and had responsibilities to obtain this evidence and break this Guinness World Record and like pave the way for women and solo female travelers. I had this huge goal, and the fact that in some of these countries, it just became so detrimental and so challenging for me to be able to collect this evidence. It was really nerve-wracking and it was really scary. And, you know, North Korea, for example, to try and get evidence there and take a picture of my visa, the fear of them throwing it out at the border. It was really scary, and there were so many unknowns. To go through all of this evidence when it was completed, to go through every single receipt and ticket and passport stamp and match everything all together. I mean, it took so much time and effort, and it took a month for me to really dive into all of this evidence that I'd sent back in these bags in paper form to my parents to then go through and sort through and find. I wasn't sure if this one bag that I thought made it to my parents had actually made it, and I was searching for it because it had evidence for a ton of different countries in there. I finally found it amidst all the stuff that I'd had acquired from this expedition and all the paperwork, and it was so stressful. Finally, you know, it was like biting my tongue, waiting for Guinness World Records to come back to me. Congratulations, you have broken these 2 Guinness World Records. Like, waiting for them to say that to me. I never thought the words were gonna come. I didn't think I was gonna do it because of the amount of evidence that needed to be submitted and in proper form and in proper timing. And if there was one piece of evidence that I was missing from a country, I couldn't go back and get it because I'd already been home for longer than the 14-day period that was allowed when you were on a break from the expedition. You could only take scheduled public transportation. You couldn't be in one country more than 14 days at a time. And so I'd already been home longer than those 14 days, and I was counting all my evidence and had officially finished my expedition. So I wouldn't have been able to go back to get that evidence I needed. So it was extremely, extremely worrisome, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna do it. Just had to keep waiting, and I had to keep hoping that all my evidence was in. And yeah, when they emailed me saying, congratulations, you have broken these 2 Guinness World Records, it was like an immense weight was lifted off my shoulders. Like, everyone was wishing me congratulations when I'd finished, but I hadn't broken the record yet. And I see a lot of people in the media now who travel to every country and say they traveled to every country, but they didn't actually get that record yet. So it's like I was pushing everyone to please be quiet, please stay quiet, the media and everything, until I actually got those words from Guinness World Records. And finally, when they said that to me, I was like, done. I did it. I did it. I did it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like. Also, you can subscribe and hit that notification bell to get notified when I'm posting videos, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.